Here we go. Oh, got that dang bird right there. Hello, everybody. Bob Lusk, the Pond Boss, coming at you live. Must be Wednesday. Let's hang out and talk about fish and ponds and stuff. So, you guys know the drill. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine in the comments section. Click like. Share this to your timeline. You're eligible for a drawing for a Pond Boss hat and something else Pond Boss, whatever Leanne decides. Hey, and also, here we go. Pond Boss Magazine comes out every other month, 6 times a year, kind of like clockwork. So, love for you to subscribe. $35 a year, cheaper than a Friday night date. Last a lot longer. Looks like we've got Nick Kajewski, Wesley Ellis, John Funk's bragging about rain. You know what? That's great. I'm glad you guys got some of that. We haven't seen that lately around here. And I think I'm going to address some of that stuff here tonight. So it looks like we got 15 or 16 folks. I see Zach Bollinger checking in. Mike Cottrell's checking in. Good to see you guys. Dave Weber, the rooster is back. Yeah, right back there somewhere. Yeah, I got to move him. Debbie's supposed to be working on this office for me. You can see the sign leaning up against the wall back there. Hoping here in a few days I'll actually have a studio to work out of, but you know what? Here we go. I thought I would talk tonight. There's Howard Dittrich. Howard, you're going to love this talk. Being a physician and you understand cardiology pretty well, you're going to also really get into this talk, so hang in there with me. So let's see here. I want to see who else we got. We got 29 people. I see Chase Ardwan checking in. Good to see Chase. Troy Todd. Monty Waddell, West Central Illinois. Good to see you guys. I'm going to monitor your questions, but in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and start talking about some of these things that have been on my mind. I was talking to Steve Alexander today, the proprietor of Private Waters Fishing, and one of his clients had a fish kill, and he's attributing it to some chemical spray where some a rancher nearby was wanting to take out some invasive species. He's a little bit worried about the chemical that killed his fish. So I got thinking about it. I got thinking, you know, in this case it could be true, but I want to talk about a number of things about stress with fish. It'll be very, very interesting, I think, for you. Hello, Fred Bingaman. Looks like Wyatt's hunkered down in Wichita Falls, waiting for a new start, trying to beat the heat. You're trying to beat the heat in more ways than one, man. Wyatt's a firefighter, and he's been dispatched to Texas from Denver to treat some grass fires, range fires, and things like that have been real prolific in our part of the planet with the heavy drought. And I think we're in like day number 20, I think, of above 100-degree temperatures with very little moisture. Hello, Danny Mac. Still hot there, but you're holding 83 and almost 85 Fahrenheit water at 3 feet. That's perfect. I want to talk about that. Michael Airy, good to see you. So here's where I want to go. I want to talk about stressors of fish. Now, here's why I want to talk about that. I can't tell you how many times I connect with somebody who says, I really want to grow some trophy bass. I want a trophy bass lake. You know, I mentioned in a show a few weeks back, I'm working with some guys who want a great crappie lake. And they've got what it takes. They've got the right habitat, they've got the right size, they've got a lot of the elements that it takes to really grow good numbers of good, healthy, large crappie. But when a fish is so drilled in and dialed in on trying to overcome stressors, it can't thrive. Look at it like this. Let's say you've got one of your favorite, pick a football team, pick the quarterback. If that guy is out there on the field performing at peak capacity, he's in his element. But let's say that he's out on the lake, riding around, gets thrown out of the boat, the kill switch is not working, not connected to him like it should be. He's out in the middle of a lake, now his boat runs off, and it's 1.5 miles to the shore. He's not thinking about how great he is. He's not thinking about how he's going to throw the football. What he's thinking about is how am I going to get to shore and not drown? Now, you know, an athlete's going to be confident that they can go that 1.5 miles, but I promise you, that's stressful. His adrenaline goes up. cortisol kicks in. Well, fish do the same thing. So what triggers some stressors, there's a number of things. There's physical stressors like the water temperature, could be dissolved gases or the lack of dissolved gases. It could be that there's not enough oxygen in the water, for example. It could be there's too much ammonia. It could be that they're along the edge and organic matter is decomposing, giving off hydrogen sulfide. It could be a noise. It could be where a deer jumps in to swim across the pond, and when that noise happens, those fish are either going to turn around and come and fight it, or they're going to run from it. So when that happens, the first thing that happens is their heart rate goes up. They get on point. They're investigating, following their instincts. They're either going to fight it or they're going to flee from it, one or the other. Other stressors, handling. If you catch a fish today and you don't get it in the boat really, really quick, if you fight that fish for 15 minutes, and then you get it, bring it overboard, hold it by the jaw, take a few pictures, turn it loose in 3 or 4 minutes, that fish is going to be distressed. It's going to be stressed out pretty heavy. So I'm just thinking, the different stressors. So the first thing that happens, it could be the density of fish. I've gotten a number of, matter of fact, Chase Ardoin and his dad Ron sent me some pictures of a client's fish that had some red sores on them way back, like in May, I think it was, and that pond is being fed heavily. Well, when the feeder goes off, the density of the population of fish is so thick, and they're so competitive for that feed that they run into each other and cause injuries. That's part of that fight or flight. They're going to go fight for that food, or they're going to run away from it. They're going to go fight for that food. And the consequences is they kick up a little adrenaline. They've got metabolic byproducts, metabolic waste that can be stressful. Sometimes they're defending a territory, like when a male bass is defending a nest. That fish is fighting for its position, and it's taking on all comers to protect those eggs at all costs. So he's always on alert, and maybe other organisms like that. Maybe otters are going to come chase them this winter. So there's a number of stressors, and part of our job as pond managers is to minimize the risk of those stressors as we minimize the effects of those stressors. Now think about it like that. Now stressors are going to happen, and right now it's temperature. I guarantee you, even Fred Bingaman's place over there in Illinois, he's Brownstown hanging out there. His water's hot. Now he's got an aeration system, so he gets to mitigate that heat. And like Danny Mack was talking about, Danny Mack's point was he's got his aeration system on a timer where when the temperature gets to a certain level, the aeration system goes off. Because at that point, temperature is way, way, way more important than the volume of oxygen, as long as oxygen is higher than the lower lethal that would kill a fish. In other words, as long as the fish has got more oxygen, slightly more than it needs to suffocate, it's not going to suffocate. It's going to breathe and be fine. In this case, they're looking for a better temperature. So Danny Max figured that out, and he's got his aeration system on a timer to where it won't kick on when the water temperature is at a certain level, but once it gets down to a certain level, it kicks on. And as it is, his temperature's hanging around in San Antonio around 83 degrees. That 83 degree temperature is the upper good level for largemouth bass. Now, bluegill can handle it warmer, but bass really don't want water warmer than 83 degrees. So you're saying, okay, well, I'm fishing and my lake's not aerated and the surface water in the afternoon is 91 degrees right now. Well, if you go down about 6 or 7 feet, it's probably 85. If you go down another 4 or 5 feet, it's probably 83, 82, 81. Those bass are going to go down and seek that temperature that is most conducive to them to not be stressed. So when you start thinking about all the different things about the stressors, and as pond managers, you're trying to minimize the stressors. It all starts with water, but there's other things as well. It could be chemistry. Well, which is still water. The water chemistry could be such to where If the pH is just barely okay and the alkalinity is a little bit low, then you're going to see pH spikes through the course of a day. That's stressful. So there's a lot of things that go on in the water that can cause stress. The other things are, handling. But here's where I'm going with this. Once that fish has a stressor, it's either going to fight it or it's going to run from it. So if it's another fish or a predator, a cormorant, a river otter, a pelican, a bigger fish, it's going to do everything it can to run from it. When it does, it's going to expend a lot of energy, kick in its adrenaline. Then the body's going to exercise, so those muscles are going to get tested. I mean, what happens when you lift weights? Your body's got to overcome all that. Fish do the same thing. So the very first thing is they go on alert. So it's kind of like an alarm bell goes off. They're on alert. Now they know something's going on. It's out of the context of their conditioning and their instinct. So now they got to make an instantaneous choice as to whether to go investigate it or run from it. So let's take a 5-pound bass, for example. It's sitting there minding its own business, and all of a sudden it hears something in the water, and it turns and it looks up, and it sees this thing swimming through the water that looks like it could be food. It's going to go investigate it. If it likes it, instantaneously it's going to eat it. But if it's your lure, then it's going to flee from it. Although it's hooked, the fish is hooked. So now you've caught the fish, you're doing the fight, it's trying to escape as much as it can, its adrenaline kicks in, it's fighting as hard as it can. This time of year, get the fish in fast because it can recover much more. It's got a greater opportunity to recover if you can get it in quick. Because what happens then, after the alarm, then it does its fight or flight, then it adapts to whatever that stressor is. And I'm going to go off on a little bit of a sidebar here, going away from the catching thing. If it was being chased, okay, now it goes and it hides and it adapts to that. Now it's got an instinctive conditioning now to where it can go hide under a log, or maybe that perfect structure that you built into your pond where there's a canopy where that 5-pound bass in this example can go hide in it until the threat of harm goes away. And then once it adapts to whatever it is, now we go back to the catching it on the line. It's fighting, it's past the alarm stage, it's trying to adapt, it can't, now it's exhausted. And you catch it, you pick it up, that fish is toast, it's tired. Now it's got to recover from that. So part of what I try to preach with this pond management stuff is it's got to recover from that exhaustion, and it could be feeding. It could be a feeding frenzy. That could be what triggers exhaustion. If a lot of energy is spent trying to go catch 8 or 10 threadfin shad out of a school, 60 yards away because a 1.5 pound bass sensed it, went and fed on it, it's still got to recover. Now it's got to use energy to digest its meal. So I want to come at you from the angle that those things are stressors. And so when a fish is distressed, it's got to recover. Now cortisol kicks in. Now its muscles have lactic acid. Now they've got to start to dispose of that and metabolize it out. And as long as it's got a good, safe environment to do that, with good, healthy, happy water, it's going to be more likely to overcome that stress. So now looking at it from a 180-degree angle, different. Now that's kind of some physical, chemical, biological ideas of stressors on our fish. Now, what do we do about it? What we do about it is we minimize the risk. We do the best we can to minimize that by having happy water, okay, which means I've preached this before. I think it's more important to manage the temperature than the volume of oxygen that's in the water. You can do that with your aeration system. Somebody emailed me last week asking me how to do that with the aeration. Heard me talking about it, but wanted specific requirements or recommendations for their lake. What I'm telling you is, based on where you are and what kind of system you've got, if you got a bottom diffused aeration system this time of year with this heat, even in Michigan, you want to be sure that you can do whatever you can to keep your water temperature 83 degrees or cooler. That's the magic number. If you can do that, then you're going to minimize the risk of stress from water and from the biological and chemical circumstances surrounding that water. Another thing is manage the density of the fish. If your fish are overcrowded, like overcrowded bass population, for example, if you can remove some of the weak ones and make room for the remaining fish and allow the food chain to do what it does to grow more food, then you can get your fish in better shape. Now, we're not that far from fall. Yeah, we kind of are that far from fall. When fall gets here, that's when the fish are going to feed the most that they can to gain as much weight, to build up as much body fat to prepare for wintertime. So, part of the way we do that is by culling the excess fish. I've told this before, look at your pond like a garden. At some point, you're going to have a bounty. It's part of your job to remove some of that bounty. Let me see some of the comments here. Danny Mac, got it. Okay, let's see here. Mike Cottrell, with lack of rain, my dirt work guy's been redoing a lot of ponds that are drying up. Luckily, he dug mine deep. Well, Mike, I think that luck probably didn't have a lot to do with that. So I'm tickled that somebody had the foresight to do. I want to make a point right there. When Mike says, Mike's in Palapena County, and actually that's where I think our buddy Wyatt's been fighting some fires not far from you over there, Mike. With lack of rain, my dirt work guy, when we go into a drought like this is the fastest drought that I can remember seeing in a long, long time. We've had prolonged droughts, but this is the first time I can remember in 30 plus years probably that we had a drought get to this point this fast. Maybe 1980, maybe 1986. I don't know, through there somewhere. But this is a drought that we're going to remember. When that happens, a lot of these old ponds dry up. Dozer guys can get in there, clean out the silt, move it out of the way, get some depth, reconfigure the shoreline. You guys can come in and add some good habitat and have basically a brand new pond. So what Mike's talking about is his was dug deep enough that it's not going to dry up. Which, kind of a sidebar there, how deep is deep enough? And it really depends on where you are, how big your watershed is, and how much rain you get. Where Mike is in Palapena County, he's right on the margin where rainstorms in the spring start to build. You get 50 miles east of Palapena County, and you don't have to have nearly the depth that you need in Palapena County, west of Fort Worth. Good evening, Chuck Brinkman. Good to see you. JM10, does the Pond Boss automatically renew at the end of the year subscription? It does not. You will get, I think, 3 renewal notices in the mail, like the magazine comes. And if you don't respond to that, then we don't have a way to automatically renew, I don't think. That's a question for Leanne. Yeah, I think we made the decision not to charge somebody's credit card unless they ask us to. I think that's where we are on that. Zach says, hey, Bob, just curious with your drought out your way, if you're looking to change the 10 acre or for 1 acre pond rule. No, I'm not going to change that rule at all. What I will change is the depth. So if we got like over in Palapena County, 10-to-1 really is a good ratio. 10 acres of watershed per acre of pond. So if you got a 10-acre lake, you need a 100-acre watershed. Now, what I will tell you, in Palapena County, if we got a 10-acre lake, I want the water to go down to 18 to 22 feet deep. If we're going to build that 10-acre lake over near Longview, Texas, where it's an 8-to-1 ratio, I'm going to tell you it doesn't need to be any deeper than about 12 to 15 feet deep. So the depth is going to be based more on water storage, on how a pond doesn't go dry in a drought like this. And especially in drought-prone areas, I like to see a little steeper shoreline. I love 3-to-1 shorelines. Sometimes, if the terrain is okay, I even like seeing in parts of West Texas, a 2-to-1, because that helps also mitigate the evaporation rate. Now, the evaporation rate is going to be based on water temperature, wind and wave action, humidity, and the temperature of the air. And the drier the air, the more it absorbs. The more wind action, the warmer the water gets, the faster it evaporates as well. Let's see, Mike McPherson, looking for a resource for some pond lilies and grasses to plant in the edges of my Indiana pond. Any recommendations greatly appreciated. Mike, what I would tell you is get in touch with Matt Rail of American Lake and Pond Management in Rushville. If anybody knows, he will know. There's Jay Tyra. Hi from Boss, Missouri. Been having hot weather. Let's see. Have been having hot weather. Tight surface covered with bubbles first thing this morning. Temperature 81 at 7. Clarity 36 inches. So you've got bubbles first thing in the morning. The only thing I can tell you without knowing more about it is if you've got heavy vegetation around the surface, that you will see bubbles coming up with respiration and or with photosynthesis. But these bubbles, depending on the age of your pond, could be from the decomposition of organic matter going on the pond bottom and releasing bubbles, especially if it's aerobic. So I don't have a real good answer because I don't have enough information on that. Hello, Travis Smith. Todd Austin, good to see you. Toledo Bend sitting around 8790. Yeah, I know. That's where it is, Chase, on top of the water. Now, if you drop your temperature gauge down about 15 feet, 20 feet, it's going to be cooler. Now, every lake that's not aerated will stratify. Now, like a lake like Toledo Bend or a great big, public lake like that, most of them stratify at halfway down. So if the water's 90 feet deep, the thermocline will be at 45. Right above the thermocline, it'll be, where it's 90 degrees at the surface, it's probably going to be 78 right above the thermocline. That's why fish go deep. They're looking for a better temperature. Danny Mack says, not on topic unless harvest reduces stress on the remaining fish. I'm thinking a gill net, if it can discriminate the catch to 5 to 8 inch bluegill and bass smaller than 14 inches. Understand it requires constant attention. Don't want to kill bluegills over 10 inches or bass over 15 inches. 50 pounds of haul would be a good start for a fish fry. Gill nets are fatal every time. So in that crappie lake I was telling you about in southwest of Memphis in Arkansas, they use a 5-inch mesh gill net to catch big carp and big buffalo to thin the numbers, and it doesn't harm any of the other fish. So if you know what you're doing and you really know your fishery, then you can actually take a look at using the gill net. But you got to know what you're doing and you got to understand your fishery because you're going to kill fish you don't want to. Danny Mack, with respect to timing, aeration to nighttime, you have pointed out that plants consume oxygen at night. Yeah, I have pointed that out because plants do use oxygen at night. So here's where I'm going with that. If the aeration system is doing what it needs to do, it's going to help the water absorb the amount of oxygen that it can while it's running at night. So it's helping dissipate the carbon dioxide produced by the plants while the plants do reduce the volume of oxygen. But when we have long photo periods like we do now, where the sun comes up in San Antonio right at 6 o'clock and goes down at 9 o'clock, you got 15 hours worth of daylight, and then you've got, what's that leave, like 15 and 9, so you got 9 hours of dark. So as long as you go in, and you won't go in at night, ponds may even be a little bit super saturated with oxygen when the aeration system kicks on at night. So it might actually even dissipate extra oxygen if you've got that many plants. But the odds of the plants consuming more oxygen than the fish need and producing carbon dioxide is mitigated when that aeration system is pushing the water to the surface to relieve it of carbon dioxide and absorb more oxygen. So it actually defeats that respiration thing going on. Hello, Doug Cusick. Good to see you, buddy. Howard District, North Florida, 12 to 15 inches of rain in the last few weeks. My lake is full. Rub it in, big dog. Christopher Aguilar, good to see you, buddy. Jay Tyra, the lake is 2 years old and clears when the breeze comes up or the sun comes up. Okay, it clears from what? I'm trying to comprehend what that means. I'm not going to be able to give you a real good response to that because I don't know what that means. When the lake is 2 years old and it clears up when the breeze comes up or the sun comes up. So in other words, it's not clear if the wind's not blowing and the sun's down. If it is, that's a phenomenon I'm not familiar with. Chris Samples, South Fort Worth here. Pond is very low. Fish are dying. Is it worth paying to have the water brought in or just start over with more rain? Chris, I'm going to tell you this. It depends on how old that fishery is. If you're going to pay to have water brought in, that means you're going to drill a well because you won't be able to bring enough water in with a water truck to make any difference. So a water well could be an answer. But let me address that after I'm going to take a little break here. Palm Boss Magazine, hey, commercial, $35 a year, cheaper than a Friday night date. Lasts a full year. I guarantee you there's a nugget in each one of these issues that is helpful for you. I also like to thank Purina Mills for helping sponsor this show. They make outstanding fish foods and, specialty diets just exactly for the fish that you raise that eat fish food. Texas Hunter Feeders. I just ordered a Texas Hunter Feeder for a client yesterday. It was delivered today. Ordered it yesterday in an email. It was shipped yesterday. He signed for it today. That's great customer service. The products are outstanding. Easy Docks of Texas. David Schneiderman. He's usually on here. He may check in. I don't know. But he is another one of our sponsors. Okay, let's see here. I see Adam Harkness. I see your question. Hello, Harrison Davis. Jeremy Duckworth. Good to see you. Let's go. I've done this on the show before, but I think it has enough merit right now in a drought to talk about it. Write this down. I'm going to take a sip of a Cabernet in a fancy cup, and then we're going to talk about something you need to write down. Grab a pencil. One acre, 1 inch deep is 27,000 gallons. Had a phone call with a guy yesterday from East Texas over near Mineola, 10-acre lake. Water's evaporating. He's in the cattle business. Cattle are drinking from his lake. And his water's dropping fast. And like right now, water is, these ponds in arid parts of Texas or the South or the Midwest. If the temperature is 100 degrees outside and humidity's 20%, you can pretty well bet you're losing close to a half an inch of water per day. And so to kind of hedge my bet during this discussion, I said, you may only be losing 0.4 inches. You might be losing 0.3. I don't know, but I did a little math. And he said, well, I've got a well that produces about 50 gallons a minute. Should I turn the well on and fill my pond back up and help beat that evaporation thing? Well, if you do the math, 1 acre, 1 inch deep is 27,000 gallons. If you do the math on a 10-acre lake, you can pretty well figure out that close to 900 gallons per minute is evaporating from that lake if he's losing 0.4 of an inch every day. 900 gallons a minute. A 50-gallon a minute of well won't make any difference. Won't make any difference at all. It'll just use up his well, make him feel a little better, irritate his wife because she wants that water for the house. It'll be better to water his cattle with that water and keep them out of the lake than it would be to put the water in the lake. So there's my answer for that. And if you're going to drill a well, you need to understand what kind of volume of water you can expect and what the water chemistry is. Adam Harkness, hatchery pond question. Clarity at 4 feet plus. Have thousands of 1/4 to 1/2 inch fry plus about 300 to 500 2-inch bluegill eating starter. Should I put a little pond fertilizer to help feed the small ones in coming weeks, aerating at night? On a hatchery pond, I'd be pretty comfortable with that as long as you've got the ability to exchange water. Since you have aeration, is that correct? Yeah, aerating and that. Yeah, if you've got the ability to exchange water, now listen to me. I'm not telling anybody else to go fertilize the pond right now. I'm telling everybody else don't fertilize the pond. But Adam knows what he's doing. He's got a hatchery pond. Visibility is 4 feet, and one of his goals is trying to give some food to these newly hatched baby bluegills. So fertilizing there where he can exchange water and aerate it, that mitigates the risk of too dense of a bloom or even getting a blue-green algae bloom going. So Adam, I'm going to tell you, yeah, I would put a little pond fertilizer in there, mix it well before you put it in, and then keep measuring your visibility. If your visibility gets down to about 2 feet, measure it twice a day, because if it gets to be about 18 inches, you need to thin the plankton bloom. So that's what I'm going to tell you about that. Jay Tyra, the bubbles clear up. Well, there's something going on with organic matter, I bet, being metabolized in the pond bottom that is giving off gases. And those gases come to the surface in the form of bubbles, and then the bubbles burst, and it's all done. Now, another thing that happens this time of year is periphyton and algae colonies will grow on the substrate of your pond bottom. They could grow on rocks, gravel, wood, and sometimes even sand. And then as those things go through their process of respiration and photosynthesis, a lot of times the gas bubbles they produce attach to them and make them break loose, and they float up in little round pods about as big around as a silver dollar. And they look kind of like algae, but if you touch one, it melts. It just falls apart and it sinks. Okay, Adam, you can pump in or out. Yep, then I would be tempted to go ahead and fertilize. Troy Seal, how much nutrition would fish possibly get from a bug zapper with the bottom cut out? I was thinking put a few around the pond. I could control them with a photocell so they only come on at night. Would it even be worth fooling or with? You know what? We had one of those. It was called a Bojo fish light. It was pretty cool. We had one on the dock at Lusk Lodge, too. And what this guy, when he invented it, he went and bought these stainless steel mixing bowls, about so big around. And then he put installed a light fixture, a waterproof light fixture in it underneath the bowl, where you could screw in a one of those squirrely whirly-gig little looking lights, fluorescent kind of light, the newfangled ones we have to buy. And then right below that, he's got what looks like a little bitty weed eater, electric weed eater and it's got a photocell on the top of it. So it comes on at dusk and it stays on till dawn. And we put it right beside the dock. And those little bugs, it wouldn't zap them, it would just knock them in the water. And the bluegills would come up and just eat the fire out of them. And they did that every night when there was bugs out there. Now, nutritional value, I don't know that it gives a lot of nutritional value, but I love the conditioning. I love the fact that we're knocking bugs out of the sky so fish can eat them. And it even attracted a few turtles when we had a whole bunch of turtles around. Yep, Adam says he's got 2 Bojos. He's got a video on YouTube. There you go. So I say yes, it is worth fooling with. Even if they get just a little bit of nutrition, that's better than not getting any of that, because that's pretty good, pretty solid nutrition, insects. All right, bring me some more questions. Oh, here's one from Harrison Davis. When would be the best time to stock golden shiners in a brand new bluegill largemouth bass pond? My hope would be to establish shiner population along with sunfish and largemouth bass. I look at that 2 ways. I think the very best time to do that, Harrison, is in the springtime right before they spawn. If you can buy golden shiners, get them from Arkansas. Anderson's is the biggest one. If you can get some gravid golden shiners in the spring, April or so, and stock them just before they spawn, and then be sure you got substrate for them to spawn on, then I think that's a smart way to go. Otherwise, stock them when they cost the least. You know, which in the fall, typically when they've got a pretty big crop, then they'll you can get them sometimes for a little bit better. Trevor Fry, can a female bluegill exceed 2 pounds? Absolutely yes. I've seen many of them. I've seen thousands of females that are much bigger than 2 pounds. I've even seen a couple that are 2.5 to 2 3/4. I've had my hands on one 3 pound, 4 ounce bluegill, but I was so in awe of it. I think it was a male, but I wanted to get it right back in the water. So I didn't think about it at the time. I was so in awe of how big it was, so I could weigh it and measure it and see that. So, but to answer your question, yeah, I've seen a lot of females that are over 2 pounds. All right, let's kind of go back to the stressor thing. If you guys, as you're thinking about the way you manage your lake, if you can think about ways that you can minimize the stressor factors and keep your fish thriving in the best conditions, then you're going to see better growth rates. Because where I was going, like with the NFL quarterback deal a while ago, that little silly analogy is he's so worried about, he's not worried about what he's going to eat. He's not worried about how far he can throw a ball, if he can, have the timing play figured out. He's trying to think, how am I going to get to shore the best way? It's his total focus. His total focus at that point is survival. It's not food. And if your fish are focused on survival because the water temperature is hot, the pH fluctuates, they don't have safety escape cover, something's trying to chase them all the time, there's a flock of cormorants that's been sitting on that pond for 7 or 8 days, those are all stressors that are going to interfere with the fish's ability to grow. And it means it's going to interfere with the end of its life, which is going to be as big as it can get. I'm always amazed to see these sharelunkers that are caught on like OHIV and on occasion one from Lake Fork that go into the program at Texas Parks and Wildlife, because those fish are able to overcome their stressors to get huge. Now, they've had a protected lake on their side for the first few years, but boy, when fishing season comes, the pressure is hot and heavy. There's boats everywhere. There's lures everywhere. There's competitive anglers doing everything they can to put their clients on that fish or to catch that fish themselves, to get it in that, to get the notoriety to catch a giant fish and maybe that very next state record fish that could be worth a whole lot of money. So if you can do the things to help your environment minimize the stressors, then you're going to have greater success. I won't be getting that phone call from you saying, hey, the fish are up piping for air, or my fish have lesions, or, the water chemistry looks like it changed, or the pond's turning over and I can't do anything about it. Should I stock my shiners with the initial sunfish and fathead minnow stocking? No, I wouldn't. I would start with the fathead minnows. I'm assuming, Harrison, you're talking about a brand new pond with no fish in it. Stock the fatheads and the sunfish. Let them get a chance to become established. The fathead minnows, those fish serve different purposes. Let's go that direction. The fathead minnow's job is to reproduce prolifically, almost logarithmically, exponentially, if they get the chance with the timing of the season. And if they can reproduce, their babies start reproducing in 90 days later, and then they slow way down when the water temperature drops down into the 50s. But once it's in the 60s up to the 80s, they're going to reproduce a lot. Well, they can't sustain themselves in a dense population of predators. Golden shiners are predators. So they'll be eating baby fathead minnows, which defeats the purpose of the fathead minnows. Stocking the bluegills, the fathead minnows first with the bluegills. The fathead minnows are the ones that are going to jumpstart fingerling bass when you stock those. Bluegills are the backbone of the food chain. So the fathead minnows are to give the bass the jumpstart while the baby bluegills grow up in that environment so they can become established and become the backbone of the food chain for years to come. The golden shiners are an added value or a value-added fish that are predators limited by mouth size. So timing is really important on that. Start off with the bluegills, red ear sunfish, and fathead minnows. Give them a chance to establish. Then come back in. If you want to stock shiners next spring, even before you stock the bass, that's okay, because by that time the fathead minnows have established themselves. Now if you do the shiner, stock those things in April or early May before they spawn, and be ready to stock fingerling largemouth bass around the end of May, 1st of June, as soon as they're available from your fish hatchery. Travis says, how is the new house? Has the chaos settled down, and how are the grandkids? Well, we just got back about 5 o'clock from Broken Bow, Oklahoma, where we were hanging out with 5 grandkids, and Debbie hijacked one of them, and he's in there with her watching Blue's Clues or something on TV. I don't know. So the new house is great, where chaos is not settled down. I'm looking forward to that at some point, and the grandkids are spectacular. We're seeing them way too much. Said nobody ever, but I know this. We're seeing grandkids more than we're not seeing grandkids. Howard Dittrick in One Lake. Oh, thanks for asking, by the way. I'm hoping here in another couple of weeks to have this wall back here. My brilliant decorator out there that's playing with the grandkids is supposed to come in here and get this all dolled up and get a little studio set look to it. And I'm hoping she gets that done in the next couple of weeks. But I saw on the calendar today that we're going to go be with more grandkids. Howard Dittrick, the queen. That's it, buddy. She is the queen. She is the queen. I'll tell you a pretty funny story, but back when I first started editing Pond Boss, I called her the princess. And I'm going to be delicate about this, as delicate as I can. But I was talking to a couple of friends of mine at a party one time, and I said, her behavior's kind of different. She said, well, you call her princess, right? I said, yeah. And I said, she's kind of gotten where she picks on me some. And I don't know, it's kind of in fun, but I don't know. Now we're just kind of making small talk. Shouldn't have done it, but I did it. And so one of the friends is a girl, and she was there with her husband and a couple others. She looked at me right in the eye. She said, I know how to fix that. And I said, well, tell me. She says, elevator to queen. Queens behave differently than princesses. I said, oh my gosh, why didn't I think about that? Wait, it's ceremony the next day. She's been the queen ever since. And I will tell her that you said hi, Travis. She's walking around with that grandbaby watching Blue's Clues from afar now. Okay, so Howard says, in One Lake, the bluegills will eat as much Aquamax that I will feed right now, 3 10-second feeds, and it's gone in a minute or less each time. If I run it again, they're gone immediately. Should I keep increasing frequency and duration? Let's talk about that. The simple answer to that is yes, you should increase frequency and duration. Now, here's the consequences of that. There's nothing wrong with not increasing the frequency and the duration. And the size of your lakes and the clarity of your water, I don't think that you will get to satiation no matter how much you feed. So what's going to happen is the fish that are the most aggressive in that area are going to be the ones that consume the majority of the feed, and they're going to be the ones that get the biggest, quickest. Then they're going to be the ones that dominate the fish nests, the beds. They're the ones that are going to reproduce more because they have better body condition than the rest of the fish. So if you want to increase the frequency and the duration, you absolutely can. And then I would just about bet you're going to see the same thing, because as big as the lakes are and the numbers of fish that you've got, that influences their behavior, and you'll just get more fish doing the very same thing. So I'm going to tell you, I don't think it's going to make any difference. I'd probably do it once and see what happens. Hello, Randy Joyner. Good to see you. I know I've missed some people tonight. It's 7:14. Let's circle back a little bit more. Let me see if I can think of anything else I want to talk about stress. Just here's the process of stress. That's one thing. There's got to be a stressor, something that causes the stress. If you can set your pond up for success with happy water, the great habitat, an adequate food chain every day, you've eliminated almost all the stressors, almost all of them. What you haven't eliminated is stressors from density, stressors from guarding a territory, other organisms chasing them, for the fight or flight thing. Catching fish, which, I mean, that's the object of the game. You want to be able to do that, So I'm not going to say, well, grow fish, but don't go fishing, but do what you can to minimize those stressors. There's some stressors you can minimize. And you do that with water management, great habitat, providing an adequate food chain, managing a harvest plan to keep the densities down. If you can do those things, you can grow some really, really big, chunky, healthy fish. Remember, they go on alert. It's kind of like what I said a while ago, their alarm bells go off. Then they either have to run from it or turn around and fight it. Here's a picture. I've got an article in the magazine that's in the mail stream right now about Dr. Jim Geisler, who passed away back in January in his 90s. And he'd been a client of mine since the early 90s. And I'll never forget electrofishing his lake one time. Matter of fact, I got a picture of him and what I'm going to tell you in this Mailstream magazine, the July-August, it's in the mail right now. But we shocked up this really good-looking 5-pound bass. Caught it, dipping it up with a dip net, put it in a live well, pumping fresh lake water onto it to minimize the stress of handling. And when I looked at that fish, I knew it had just eaten something. Well, when we stopped the boat and got ready to weigh and measure fish, process them, do the things we need to do, get the data on them, then release them back into the lake, that bass had upchucked a water moccasin. It had swallowed a water moccasin. So imagine a water moccasin going across the surface of the water, that bass seeing it, it's got to make the instantaneous decision, is that a predator or is it something I can eat? It bolted toward it, hit it like a top water lure, sucked that sucker down before the snake even knew what hit it. And it had it partially digest when it upchucked it in the live well. So that's the kind of behavior that I'm talking about. That young pheasant's tail is moving. First time I've noticed that. Huh. Okay, Adam Harkness, they're worth every penny, and we catch insane amounts of crappie in the winter around them. Yeah, with the Bojo lights. Okay, I got you. Let's see here. Steve Lewis, hi Bob, how's the lake in Mexico you got Florida fingerlings from me 15 to 20 years ago doing? Asking for a friend. That was a pretty fun little endeavor. Well, that lake was huge. Now, just to kind of tell that story a little bit, there's a fella from Louisiana that bought into a ranch in Mexico about, 10 miles off the Rio Grande River, a white-tailed deer ranch, and he decided to build a lake. But we couldn't find any topo maps. There were no topography maps there. And so we just had to shoot from the seat of our pants, and there was a local surgeon at the biggest town nearby that owned several bulldozers. This was real interesting to me. So this surgeon worked in his clinic and at the hospital 4 days a week, and the other 3 days a week, he was a bulldozer operator. So he and a couple of his hands started building this dam, and they did it back and forth, back and forth. Well, they didn't do a core trench, and it's arid in that part of the country, but they had a tropical storm blow across from Baja, California back then. This was probably 25 years ago. Filled that lake up in one rain, 600-acre lake. Now, the lake was a borrow pit with a dam in front of it. With the borrow pits in front of the dam, and then it backed up into acres and acres of desert brush. Now, as we talked about that lake, I wasn't really designing very many lakes back then, but we did talk about creating kind of a spoke effect coming off of that borrow pit, where they take the dozers and go push through the brush to open up boat lanes. So when that lake filled up, it actually spilled around the spillway and ate away part of the spillway. And the owner and his running buddies got trapped in that during that rain. They saw the lake rising, and they saw the lake begin to spill over into the creek. So they decided they'd get their things and get out of there. So they had a Suburban, and they loaded their things up, went into the creek below the lake where the water was flowing in over the spillway, floated their Suburban downstream, and they had to get out, climb on top. When the Suburban finally stopped, they got out in the brush and walked back to the house. But that doesn't answer your question there, Steve. So about 5 years later, I was talking to him, because I didn't go back much after that. I just didn't really want to go to Mexico that much and check on that lake, because I couldn't take an electric fishing boat down there. You couldn't take fish down there. Don't ask me how we did it, but we figured it out. But they were catching some 7 to 9 pound bass by year 5. Then they went into that drought, and the lake started to shrink. And at one point, it shrank down into the borrow pit. They had a fish kill, which wasn't complete, wasn't a total fish kill. Then the lake filled back up. And I haven't heard a word about it since then, so I don't know. Okay, so that's the best answer I can give. I really need to call and ask that. I've caught him a couple of times and not been able to get him. Troy Seal, barbless hooks probably stress fish less. Uh-oh. Yes, they do. They stress fish less. And they surely heal faster when caught. Yes, they do. So now, here's a scoop on that. When you catch a decent-sized bass, a barbless hook, I'm all for that. Go do it. Because if it gets off, fish 1, you 0. But if you catch it, you 1, fish 0. Then when you catch it, if you do want to get it out of the water, support the belly, because those fish are semi-buoyant in the water and they can control how they move. But you take them out of the water, gravity is going to pull their guts down. It can distend their spine. And so you got to support their bellies. Get the picture you want to take. Don't jack their jaw around, and then release them as soon as you can. Okay. Clint Price, if you don't have bass big enough to keep them in check, they'll get too big. Bass can't eat them, wasting space in the pond. If you do have bass big enough, it's awesome forage. That's a pretty fair statement. One little qualifier from what I told you a while ago is if you're going to stock shiners in the spring, you don't have to stock but 4 or 5 pounds per acre. If you'll stock 4 or 5 pounds per acre and let them reproduce, the baby shiners are coming of age about the time that you're stocking your bass. And the baby bass can eat the baby shiners and the baby fathead minnows, and the shiners are going to be less likely to decimate the fathead minnow population. Okay, so let's see here. Harrison Davis, you may find this interesting or may already know about this, but we have an ice-cold river that runs through the metro Atlanta area that has rainbow brook and brown trout in it. The water comes from the bottom of Lake Lanier. That's really interesting that there's enough oxygen in that water to support that fishery. The same thing happens there at, what's the lake right there at Big Cedar Lodge, Branson, Missouri? Come on now. I know that lake. I know the name of it. I'm seeing it in my mind. It's on the White River. Anyway, they're releasing water midway down that lake, and it supports a trout fishery in Lake Taneycomo there that runs right through Branson, Missouri. Table Rock. Thank you, Troy. That's it. You rescued me. So Table Rock Lake is dumping cold water, and they actually run a bunch of that to a raceway where they grow rainbow trout there. So Lake Taneycomo is the lake that is below Table Rock Lake that supports mostly a rainbow trout and a brown trout fishery there as well. So there we go. Well, guys, I'm kind of running out of topics for the moment. It's 7:24, so I think I'm going to wrap us up right here. I do appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget, Palm Balls Magazine, $35 a year. You do have other resources. This is what fuels the economy to be able to do this kind of show right here. This does it. So you also have palmboss.com, and Fred Bingaman is Bing on the website for him. He's on there quite a bit. It's the website for him is now in its 20th year, actually starting its 21st year. So there's great information there. Of course, on this Facebook page, we upload these videos to YouTube. I've got some more videos coming that we put together, just short subject matter type videos that we're going to put up on YouTube here before long. I'm working on the September, October issue of Palm Balls Magazine. I'm going to hunker down tomorrow and do that tomorrow in the next 2 or 3 days as I can. And if you guys have questions or thoughts, send me an email, info@pondboss.com. I'll do the best I can to answer it and help you get where you want to go. So I'm going to sign off and tell you again, thanks for watching the show. So until next Wednesday, which I think I'll be at Running River Ranch at the RV with a slow internet connection. So until next Wednesday, adios.